Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's panel session as part of the ECRM Supplier Diversity Week. I'm very excited to have everyone here joining us today for a very insightful, timely discussion. Today we have several leading industry icons, I like to call them icons in the industry, who are going to lead a discussion on diversity, the diversity movement, which is being brought to you by the We Group, which we're going to share more with you about in a little bit. Today's panel is reflections of the past year. What have you done and where are we going? And it's all about the commitment to ongoing diversity and inclusion development. And again, a great panel of leaders, industry leaders, to have this discussion today. Today we also have a excellent moderator, Michele Mohammed, who is the Chief Sales and Marketing Officer of DSC Healthcare Solutions. I want to just tell you a little bit about Michele. Michele has a natural curiosity and contrarian approach to marketing, who's always asks the question what a brand could be. From R&D through product experience, she believes the questioning convention drives innovation and new ways to love her legacy brands. In the years prior to joining DSC, Michele has led celebrated CPG brands and gained experience across more than 15 health and beauty product categories. Michele is the executive chair of We and the chair of the 2021 CHPA Marketing Conference. She also has a distinguished mention as Top Women in Health, Wellness, and Beauty, awarded by Drugstore News, and she is a graduate with an MBA from the Wharton School of Business. Before we get going, I do want to just mention to the audience, please chat in your questions. At the end of the panel, we will address questions if time allows. So without any further ado, Michele, the panel is yours.
Thank you, Wayne. Good morning, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here moderating this panel as the recently installed chair of the We Board. We appreciate ECRM for giving us the floor to this important conversation. Today, we'll hear from 4 outstanding women representing retailer, manufacturing, and the supplier communities, but also my fellow We Board members. So first, if you'll oblige me, I'll give you a little bit of background on We, because we're a fairly new organization. We were founded about 3 years ago when a group of female leaders got together at an industry event to connect and network with each other and to discuss issues affecting women, like, work-life balance, managing uncomfortable moments, what it's like to be the only women in the room, the pros and cons of that across all the health and wellness industry. So they decided to formalize the group, and not just to those women that were included, but to make sure to mentor the next generation of women who may not attend the industry events, as well as develop a community that can empower and mentor women and bring along all of the women and men that are allies who support the mission. So I welcome you to join our community via our website at 4we.org, that's the number 4we.org, or via our LinkedIn page at We Empowering Women to Advance Wellness. Today, during Supplier Diversity Week, it's an apropos time to have a conversation about those DEI topics. And specifically, we're going to address equity, access, and inclusion. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel of seasoned executives in alphabetical order by first name. Heather Hughes is the Group Vice President and GMM of Seasonal General Merchandise and Photo at Walgreens. Jocelyn Konrad is the Executive Vice President and Chief Pharmacy Officer at Rite. Lisa Paley is the General Manager for GSK of US and Puerto Rico. And Rosalind Chapman is CEO of the Chapman Edge. Welcome, ladies, and please take yourselves off mute. So let's get into it. I will direct questions to each of you to start, but please feel free to build on all with your points of view. Let's start by reflecting back to that time. Last year, almost a year now, right? Where there were the summer of protests for George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. Those protests really jump-started a global conversation that represented at its core systemic and cultural change, with DEI at the center of it. So we thought it was important to be a force in facilitating that discussion. I'll start with you, Jocelyn. Can you tell us, you reflect back to that time, tell us where were you in your personal understanding of DEI issues? And how did that time really serve to widen your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, wow, in the last year, let me go back. I thought I was very open-minded and had a very good handle on DEI and just diversity in general. You know, building upon and building some women's leadership networks. I thought I got a handle on this, and I kind of know what I need to do. And then to your point, what happened last summer hit really home to me. I live outside of Philadelphia, so I watched it unfold, you know, in my own community, and it was heartbreaking. And I didn't know how to react. Like, I thought I had answers. I thought I understood. And as I watched it unfold, you know, I realized I did not. And I didn't even truly understand. And even though I thought I did, right? It was a very important moment in my life because I recognized that I didn't understand. And for me, watching it unfold, watching my children who are, you know, teenagers, and trying to have conversations, really a struggle for me. And I know I shared with, I'll share a personal story. So we had a meeting. I'll never forget it because it was literally, I think we already had planned it, I believe. And it was a couple days after all of that. And you and Roz, other members of we had a conversation about it. And it hit home so hard. I will never forget you all challenging all of us to ask people how they were feeling and how it impacted them, especially those that were impacted by it, those that we work with that were Black and brown and really had a different impact than I did. And I shared, my son had a friend over literally while all of this was happening. National Guard were in his community, like in his streets. When my son went to pick him up, that National Guard was all over Philadelphia. And he came to my house and I was wrong. And I didn't really talk about it. I didn't ask him how he was feeling. I tried to just comfort him and make him feel safe in a different environment. And when you all had that conversation, that was the most impactful moment of the year for me, because I thought I missed the opportunity to truly care and to truly ask and to truly connect to what was happening in this world. And I was wrong. I did not connect in the moment. I obviously subsequently later learned and tried to, you know, follow up on those emotions, but it wasn't the same if it wasn't in the moment. And I will never, you know, do that again. But you and the team empowered me to understand what to say. I think that was it. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to bring it up. And I was afraid I would trip and do something wrong. And for me, that was the moment that was a key learning experience for me personally. And then I'll just share quickly, if I can, professionally in our organization, if I can, and I promise it'll be quick. As an organization, I also then looked to our CEO who did something amazing that I felt. And if you go to a Rite Aid, every front door of our buildings, she boldly put a message out to everyone in the communities we serve. And I'm going to read it. It said, "To our customers, team members, and loved ones whose lives have been affected by discrimination, you will always have a home at Rite Aid." And wow. then I have to put my glasses on because I'm sorry, I can't read that well. But I don't want to mess it up and paraphrase. Her quote is, "Let me be clear, racism, injustice, and intolerance have no home in the Rite Aid organization or in our communities. And professionally, watching our leader take that stance and boldly put it out there also was a teaching moment for me as a leader and as an executive. And, you know, what a great mentor to have in that type of messaging. And they still are on every one of our doors at Rite. So both professionally and personally, you know, a very impactful moment in my life last, I guess it was May or June. I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I remember it though.
Thank you for sharing that, Jocelyn, because that's, first of all, I want to tell you, you obviously know that at that moment you were not alone. These conversations were happening in most organizations and corporations across the country at that time. So you were not alone in that journey. And what a powerful statement that is on the doors of Rite. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you very much. Heather, I know you had mentioned to me in a previous conversation that Walgreens, you know, had DEI policies in place previously, but it felt different after George Floyd in terms of how the policies were measured and how you felt about the conversations you were having. Did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, of course, Michele. So DE&I was absolutely, actually, we defined it differently. I think it was D&I before everything happened. I mean, just to put it bluntly, it was diversity and inclusion. And you know, we talked about it. We certainly, you know, didn't want prejudice to happen or anything, but it wasn't like an open conversation. It wasn't a dialogue that was happening within the company to say, how do we make sure there's truly equity happening? And what I would say is, you know, after the events, you know, our company really took a step back, and, you know, I have to give Alec Corley a lot of credit. And you know, he was very humbled and stood before the organization and said, I have so much to learn. I didn't know that I had this much to learn. And with that, Carlos Cubio, who is our leader for DE&I, really stepped forward. And that's where he added that equity has to be part of our goals. And we have to set goals, real goals, not, you know, just targets that are not part of compensation, but it needs to be part of our compensation, part of our focus, because anything you're compensated for tends to be where your organization focus. Yeah. So, and they made that monumental change, and it was huge. And it wasn't just, let me put a goal there. It's, here's how we want to achieve it. We want to change how we do our interviews. We need to structure our panels differently. We need to make sure that the folks that are interviewing, that we have a diverse slate of candidates interviewing. And all of that really came to light. It wasn't as though there wasn't discussions that those were the right things to do prior. It was, this is what we're going to do now. And so it was, and it was universal. It was the whole company receiving it and saying, absolutely, we're all on board. We need to do this. And equity has to be a focus within our organization. And I give a lot of credit to our executives as well, because they led sessions with our team members in the field and had real authentic discussions to say, how do we help? How do we support? And, you know, probably similar to many of the organizations you work for, it's a very conservative culture. We didn't talk openly in that way. So it was really uncomfortable at first, but it was a good uncomfortable because it was the right conversations to have. And then they're ongoing. It hasn't stopped, which is what I love. And it goes back to, if you put it as a focus, then the company really focuses on it. So I've been really proud of the work, you know, similar to how Jocelyn shared, right? Like it's an inspiration to see your leaders step up and kind of open that door and make it okay to have these conversations and to say, we're going to do a different path forward.
Yeah, no, thank you. That sounds great. Roz, I'm going to ask you, because for you and I, it was a little different. As Jocelyn referenced, when this happened, I know I called you and we were talking about how we were feeling about it and said, you know, should we approach the board and make this our conversation? Because if I remember correctly, we were in this mood of trying to celebrate because it was COVID and everybody was feeling a certain way about being in COVID. And we were trying to bring each other some comfort, but we thought it was really important that we talked about it at that point. But specifically for you and I, to bring this forward, this is a conversation we hadn't had with these women who we know and respect, but it was a different side of vulnerability. So tell me what that experience was like for you.
I have to say, hold on.
Call from carrier.
Thought I had taken that phone off the hooks. Apologies for that.
Life happens, right? This is real life, live.
All right. Now that that's over, apologies for that. You know what? That word you used, comfort. We were a group that was comfortable with each other before this happened.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just such an incredible blessing because our group has been such a support bubble. I feel like that's what it was. So I didn't really feel vulnerable after we started the conversation because I felt like I was embraced with people I knew and cared about me. So being able to talk candidly about how I felt came easy. And I think we can all have that bubble created around us, a we-like environment, so that when we feel vulnerable, we can have curious and comfortable conversations. Because like Jocelyn said, once we get past that, then we are better for it. We've learned from it. So yes, it may not feel good at the time, but later on, it's just amazing because it was a sprinkling of a teaching moment.
Absolutely.
Can I add to that and build on that? Because you just triggered. I think it was most impactful to me because of that circle of trust, right? We've built these relationships with each other through we, and without that, I don't think I would have had that conversation, but we all trust each other. We've built some relationships. So we were all, I remember crying, we were very vulnerable during that conversation with each other. And it just shows how you can build upon those relationships and these organizations as well, in ways you didn't even think you would. So it triggered that for me too, very similar to you. I felt the same way that I was with a group of people that I trusted and could be vulnerable with. So that was an awesome call out.
Yeah, it's amazing. We hear every day in the news the term social distancing. This was the opposite. It was social closeness, right? We were able to get much more comfortable with a group of folks we already knew. So I think that's an important part of it, like developing those relationships and breaking down those barriers. Well, thank you all for sharing those pieces. I want to transition to talking about access. So I know retailers, you guys with the stores, you have proximity to underserved communities or underrepresented communities. And I know especially with COVID and the testing and vaccines, you were definitely leveraging that proximity to get to everybody that needed help. Can you talk about what the rollout was like and what kind of challenges you experienced in terms of access? Jocelyn, we'll start with you again on that.
Sure. As you know, this has been my day and night 24/7 key objective for the last year. And it was, again, a huge learning. You talk and you speak about health equity, and it's not always about proximity and access, right? And that's kind of just layer one. That's the first step. And so we did focus very diligently using the socially vulnerable index that we received from the CDC to ensure that we were providing that access in those communities that needed those services, needed the testing, needed vaccines the most. But that was phase one. Then when we talk about just equity and inclusion, there was lots of learnings and work that had to do. Although the store might have been in the center of that community, we learned very quickly that we had to go deeper into the communities to meet them where they were, to pull back hesitancy or make it as convenient as possible to truly support that equity. So a lot of work had to go into them. We had to learn. We learned that we had to partner with key community leaders, right? those individuals really trusted, talk about the circle of trust, they trust those community leaders. They trusted even some governmental officials that they actually, voted into those positions. So there is trust there. So we found very quickly that if we partnered with those individuals, although we were a very strong part of the community, by partnering with those others inside the community and collaborating, we were much more successful of getting people to come out and get the vaccine and get tested, because it was much more comfortable for them as well. And although we always will have it in our stores, we continue to go deeper into those communities and churches and really meeting people where they are and where they are most comfortable and where they are going to trust those that are giving them the information to basically break down some of those myths or bust some of those myths, that, as you would say, in what's out there in the world about vaccines and et cetera. We use science, and we gave them the right information so that they could make the best decisions for themselves and their families. But it was hard. It still is hard. And we'll continue to fight that fight and get deeper and deeper into the communities and working with our partners across the country to get there.
Yeah, wow. So, but those relationships will serve you in the future as well, right? So that's great that you've done the groundwork for that. So
right,
that's
right.
great. That's great.
Yeah, for all health equity, right? Not just
Absolutely.
COVID vaccines or testing. Like, we've learned so much. I think we will be able to have a much bigger impact on just general health equity. Again, it's not about having a scheduling tool and having the doses there. If you're technology naive and you don't have access, that didn't really give them access, right? We had to just figure out other ways to really balance the equity in these communities. I shared with you, Michele, that cartoon. I love it. We should bring it up on the screen with the boxes. I'm sure you all have seen it, but it was an aha moment for me when you have a small child, a shorter, and then a taller person. You can give them all a box, right? That's not equity. You got to make sure you're giving them the resources that they need so they all actually can get and achieve the same results. So that visual will stay with me forever. And every time we roll something out at Rite Aid to support health equity, I'll continue to play that in my mind to try to figure out what those boxes are and where they need to go so that we truly are making a difference.
That's fantastic. I like that cartoon. It definitely does tell a story. And we keep hearing that same word come up again, equity, right? That's at the corner of this. Heather, I recently saw in the news that Walgreens is rolling out mobile clinics for testing and same-day vaccinations for the same reason, to get, like, the stores are not enough. You really need to provide access closer in the communities. Can you tell us a little bit about what's happening there?
Yeah, so just like Jocelyn talked about, I mean, we're learning, right, as a retail unit, and as we want to make sure that it is equitable and the access is there, that we needed to find other ways to get into the community. Of course, there are community members who want to come into the store, and they took advantage of those appointments, but to truly reach the patients and customers that need to be reached, we need to go to them. And so, similar to what Jocelyn talked about, right? We've done clinics and churches and community centers to try to make sure we're doing the outreach. We've been reaching out to those residents. We've partnered with Uber to provide rides, but we know we need to do more. And so the recent announcement is, we've been able to do mobile prescriptions and mobile access when hurricanes happen. Why not apply that type of concept for this? And this is just a start, right? So this is for COVID, and I'm not on the team that runs any of this, but I'm sure lots of conversations are happening about what this looks like in the future. But we're rolling out these mobile clinics. We're starting in Chicagoland area, into the most underserved areas of the population where we know access is still a challenge. And we're going to bring it, and it will be walk up for the community to receive a vaccine from a Walgreens pharmacy team member. And then over the next 2 months, we'll be taking these clinics across additional locations across the country. So I just think it's another way to make sure we're meeting these customers that need, the vaccines, and providing it in a way that's accessible to them and overcoming some of those barriers that they may have, and making sure we're in their community to help them. So I'm really excited about it. I'm really proud of the organization for getting this up and running.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you. We all appreciate that. Staying on the theme of access, but from a different angle, thinking about the products in the stores. Lisa, this question is for you. When we think about consumers really wanting access to OTC medicines because they were afraid for a long time to go into the stores, to go into the doctor's offices, to go into hospitals, because they knew there was going to be COVID present there. How did GSK think about that in terms of giving more access to OTC medicines and maybe immunity products for self-care?
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Michele, and good to be with you guys this morning. You know, we were taking a number of different actions, you know, to help ensure access, but in different ways. So part of that access actually during COVID was around availability, because supply chains were greatly disrupted. And so we spent tremendous energy and effort really trying to make sure that product availability, first and foremost, was there for the consumer. And that meant the store shelves. And as many people know, that swift change to the digital landscape, so also making them available online. And while I'll say it wasn't a perfect process, you know, by far, because there were many, many of these disruptions, I think what we were able to do really quickly was prioritize, as you mentioned, things around the access that they maybe weren't getting from a doctor's office, and really just the importance of overall immune health, of which we had products that were squarely, you know, suited for consumers in that category. So we were very much about rapidly expanding our partnerships across the supply chain, really leaning in with retailers, importantly, about what mattered to them and how to prioritize, you know, what could be available. We worked things as industry, you know, because it was a matter of making sure everything was going to be there. And then importantly, you know, we continued with some pretty aggressive, you know, launch plans during COVID, when it would have been really easy to say, let's just maybe hold back. But we didn't. And we talk about things like people who suffer from arthritis who couldn't get to a doctor, but were able to get Voltaren alternatively at that time. And so by not holding back, it genuinely opened up for literally hundreds of millions of people access to a medicine like that. And so I think these were the choices that you make under fire when you're really trying and serious about being there for the consumers and what they need. I think the other thing that was really interesting, and many retailers caught on to this, but we helped bring it to activation, was around HSA and FSA. And these are programs that actually got reinstated under the CARES Act, which was very much around, you know, responding to COVID from a government perspective. And through that, and the ability to really understand those programs, which had gone away for about a decade for OTCs and other everyday medicines, we were able to work with a couple of retailers and have that activation literally by the end of the year, which was really important because that's when a lot of people are able to really benefit from that. Mm-hmm. But think about, we had a generation of people, millennials in particular, who knew nothing about what that even meant. So it was about re-education and working with the industry associations and the retailers to really bring information that can really help not only their health, but help them save money on their healthcare. And so those became really important initiatives as well. From a supply perspective.
Wow, that sounds like a lot to do. I'm sure you had to change plans once or twice in order to get all of that done. Thank 100%. You. Very much. We definitely, as consumers, all appreciate that huge effort that GSK had to undertake. You know, if we talk about promoting inclusive entrepreneurship, because that is also important. We're sitting here at Supplier Diversity Week, which I understand from ECRM is clearly not new, but has definitely seen a major uptick since last summer. So Roz, I wanted to ask you specifically, because this has been your life's work, right? You are one of the pioneers in this space, representing the underrepresented suppliers of color. Have you seen a rise in visibility for inclusive entrepreneurs and their ability to gain access to retailers? And what has it meant to suppliers in your networks?
You know, real measure of whether there's been an uptake or not, it's too soon to really tell because the assorting channels are long. So I would say in about a year, when line reviews can be seen in the stores. and the assorting decisions made, it'll be a clearer measure of whether there was more inclusiveness across several aisles. In beauty, it's always been inclusive. It's been an area where smaller vendors have been able to enter their items at retail because of a specific need. Where the real measure will be like Lisa said, an external pain. Have we seen a rise in manufacturers of diverse backgrounds on the shelf? Will we see for Heather in seasonal? Will we, not calling anybody out, but we have talent across all aisles, and food, many aisles. Will we see an uptake in diversity and inclusion across front end? Will we see it in the store management? Will we see it in board appointees? I think we've already started seeing more diversity in board positions, which is just such a wonderful compliment because there's talent out there. And if you bring in different ideas, you can only be more successful. Whether it's a board, like board of directors, or whether it's an advisory board. Ideas help keep you fresh. So to answer your question, yes, I am very confident. In the long run, it will be measurable.
Wow, that's good perspective for sure, for sure. Well, what advice would you give to your new vendors about breaking in, and any tools they need to do, any certifications they need to have? How can you help maybe listening those get a better footing?
I strongly encourage the entrepreneurial companies to be persistent in trying to get through to the right person. Know who the right contact is. And before you even make that connection, be sure that your checklist in regards to supply chain know-how, R&D, accounting, know what a pallet is. I'm not trying to be dismissive, but before you make that contact, know what you don't know. And if you don't know, bring on someone who can help you. You can find consultants in supply chain. It's so critical now. And COVID taught us that. If you didn't know how to work your way around a supply chain issue in 2020, then you learned a lot. There was a learning curve there, whether it was because your caps were caught on a ship in the canal, or whether it was because you didn't forecast enough to be able to meet demand. So there's so much more to success in a retailer and asking for a meeting with a category manager. Once you get that meeting, have your house in order. Know that you can manage being in an 8,000 chain store, and that you can, if you can't manage it now, then ask yourself tough questions and say, I really just want to start out in 1,000 stores. Just make sure that where you are, you perform. Turn that advertising on right away. Have a great advertising agency to help you with your creative, and know what turns the needle for your consumer. Who is your shopper? Don't lean on the retailer to make your brand successful. It's up to the entrepreneur to invest in driving traffic into that retail door.
Yeah, thank you, Roz, for that expert advice. I'm sure people that are listening really appreciate that. Would anyone else like to weigh in on inclusive entrepreneurship and anything you're seeing with your organizations?
I can add in a little bit. We're actually holding a localization summit in partnership with ECRM because we have a 9,000 plus fleet of stores, and when you really look at that, a product that is in the West Coast may not be relevant to the customers that are in the East Coast or in the southern states, and so it becomes really important for us to diversify our products. And we want to look for those kind of local, diverse, regional businesses where we can bring in products that are relevant to the community. And it goes back to servicing communities. And I kind of open the door to to these new entrepreneurs that are looking to get their products in. And to Roz's point, learn the key components of how to do that. It's really important. But also, it's okay not to set your sights on the full fleet. We can start smaller, and if you have that good backing, we get the product in the right communities, service the customers that you're targeting, and then from there, look at the opportunities to grow. And I think it's just a ton of opportunity when we think about it that way. And I'm real excited that we're having the localization summit. It's the first one that we've ever had, and I think we're going to find some good products to help serve our local communities.
That's fantastic to hear that, especially that you're partnering with ECRM. Yeah, I mean, it's talking about women, and we talking about inclusive entrepreneurs, and that means veterans and LGBTQ and differently abled and so many more, right? We are all diverse in lots of different ways. So yes, no, it's great that your Walgreens is doing that as well. So the last topic I wanted to turn to, and I'd like each of you to touch on this, because you're all senior, talented women, and it's around promoting equity at the top. And in the last 3 to 5 years, we've had some real wins for women in our industry. And I wanted to make some time to recognize that. Not only are you guys talented, but if you think about it, the CEO of GSK, Lisa, Emma Walmsley, is a woman. Rite CEO, Hayward Donegan, is a woman. And the Walgreens CEO, Rosalind Bluer, is pretty new, all happening in the last few years. That's huge. I mean, when we first started talking about it, we wouldn't have thought that this would have manifested itself so quickly. So I'd like to ask each of you, what impact do you think that will have on industry, and how has it impacted you personally? I'll start with Lisa.
Okay.
Start with Lisa.
Thanks, Michele. Yeah, it's the first time I've ever, worked for a woman CEO. And Emma is world-renowned, literally world-renowned for what she's accomplished. But I will say it does have a trickle-down effect. And that is a very positive thing for an organization, because it says, if it's okay for the top, it's okay for us broadly. And I think it really then changes the behaviors of the organization, and what is permitted and in fact expected, in terms of that. And so for us in GSK, to their credit, I joined them, just a little over, 19 months ago. But prior to that, even, they've been on a great journey of really embracing the diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we're on a journey, as many of us are. But I give them a lot of credit for getting a really good running head start on that, and for really living into it for colleagues and letting it be a real point of how we attract people into the organization, how we help retain them and develop them. And I think it's so important that there's a real good proportionate focus on making sure that we are right in a lot of different dimensions. And I'm super proud, to work for a company that thinks about it that way and really welcomes it at our place.
That's wonderful. Heather, Jossie, Roz,
Here, I can go ahead and jump in.
Okay.
So, Rosalind obviously is new to Walgreens, but making her mark very quickly. And, one thing I love, so I'll take a personal aspect at it first. If you look at her resume, take her name off, don't see the face. What accomplishments. I mean, it's amazing accomplishments. It doesn't matter, on the diversity and the fact that she's female, the accomplishments speak for themselves. Then add that how difficult it is. We all know it's very, very difficult to accomplish those types of things with a diverse background, with being a person of color who's female. And so it is amazing and inspirational for me to see a woman rise to that. And then to add more to that, so she's a working mother. She is a mother of 2. And I will say, one of the first VP meetings that she held, she talked about her priorities. And do you know the first priority she decided to talk about? Her kids, her family. And for me,
Wow.
Because that is also my number one priority. I love my job, but my number one priority is my family. to hear that come out of her, to Lisa's point, it like opened the doors to say, it's okay to be a working mom and to have your family as part of your priorities. And I loved that moment and what that meant for me. And I look forward to many more and being able to interact with her and learn from her, because it's amazing what she has accomplished. And I think it's going to be even more amazing what she will accomplish. And I think she's going to make an impact in the industry. And I love that she's relatable for me. And I think it is trickling into the business, and many team members are just inspired, and it just gave a whole new, fresh way to look at everything. So we're still new with Roz, but very, very excited about what she's bringing to Walgreens and WAVA.
That's cool. Good story.
All right, I'll jump in.
Sure.
I always have something to say. But, similarly for me, I guess I look at it even, obviously super excited when Hayward joined. I mean, professionally and personally, all the same things I think Heather's going to experience. It just changes the whole culture. It changes the conversation. When that leader is a female, it does change from, especially historically, if you did not have that. So my career in retail, as everyone knows, has been since I was a baby, right? So I've always loved retail. And what was very interesting to me personally was when I was in the field, it's very diverse in the field, right? Everyone knows that in the stores, and we mimic the communities. Typically, our field is very representative. Pharmacy in particular is a very female-centric profession. So I never felt what a lot of people were talking about. I was like, I don't know what you're all talking about. I have no problem. I'm not the only female at the table during most of my career. Well, then I got to the corporate environment, and that changed very dramatically. And I struggled with it, as many on this call knows, initially. So to also identify that women make most of these decisions in retail and healthcare always baffled me, because those making the final decisions really sometimes didn't always get it. And to try to voice that opinion or voice that perspective or point of view when you are only one was always such a challenge, and it just didn't connect the dots. So having a female CEO obviously changed many things. But to Heather's point and Lisa's point, it trickles down. And the importance of that is it gives everyone kind of a different lens to look through, and it just changes the conversation at the table. I used this with Michele at one point. When you go out, this is kind of probably a corny example, but if we go out as females in this group, our conversation is very different. It just is. If we all have a male significant other, husband, whatever, join at that table, the conversation just changes. And then on the flip, it's very different if it's only those people, our significant others, if they're male, on the other side, right? So it's so important to recognize how that diversity just changes the conversation, which ultimately, in my opinion, changes the outcome. And the more we recognize that and the more we embrace that, the better off we will be as an industry, in my opinion, because we will be meeting the needs of all of our consumers, whether it's her or him at some point in time, because our male counterparts sometimes shop and make decisions, but not in my house. Definitely the decision maker for all of those things. So I just think it's wonderful. It's great to see the industry. I've been in pharmacy my whole life. This is the first time, when Hayward was first, put into position, I was like, finally, a woman in pharmacy. And now there's 3 in the big 3 chains. Like, how incredible is that in 1 year? It still baffles me, because for 29 years of me being in this industry, it wasn't even a possibility, it felt like. So super excited, super proud of the organization, super proud that even at our board, half are female. So, it is literally changing day by day. So, pretty excited to be part of this conversation and in the industry at this very pivotal change that I think we're going to see some great things come out of. So excited to see it, excited to be part of it.
That's great. So it sounds like there's a ton of optimism. Roz, I know, what would it be like for you to sit down with being a CEO yourself with a table of all women CEOs? How would that feel?
Pretty exciting. But I'd have to add, I mean, some of my best mentors have been men. I mean, from the beginning, I don't really believe I would have learned as much as I've learned or been exposed to as much as I've been exposed to for the last 20 years as an entrepreneur without male mentors in my life who just took my hand and said, come on, Roz, let me show you this. So it's not just the formal training, it's the training that you have everywhere and across all spheres of your life. And I can say that having a seat at the table, I'm hoping that when we do, we are approachable and that we can help others and speak words that make others comfortable when we can. Like Heather said, speaking about family, I mean, it's just so important to who someone's core represents. So then you create a village of people who want to help you succeed.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, obviously, we need everyone aboard to be allies in the conversation about DEI, right? It takes literally the village in order to get this done. But I leave us on this conversation on a very optimistic note. So thank you, ladies. I wanted to leave some time for some Q&A because I know and I've seen that there's a lot of questions in the chat. With such an illustrious panel, there are a lot of questions for you. So at this point, I'd like to thank you for the lively discussion, and I'll turn it over to Wayne for the Q&A.
Michele, thank you. And panelists, really do appreciate it. Maybe you guys could just mute because there's a little echo. Sorry. Okay. So Michele and group, thank you very much for providing your wisdom, insights, guidance, and direction. Personally, I've known all of you for the last many years, and all of you have acted to me as a mentor in one way or another through learning and understanding. So I do appreciate that. I think Roz hit it on the head, and I think what Roz said was know what you don't know. And I think one way that you can learn what you don't know is by leaning into the we group. So maybe Michele, it's a great group that established itself many years ago. There are leading women executives who are in the know the industry. It's a terrific network. And if you are not part of the we network, I encourage you to join. And so Michele, can you just repeat how someone can find we?
Absolutely. So our website is 4 we.org. And on LinkedIn, we're We Empowering Women to Advance Wellness. I'll say that again. It's We Empowering Women to Advance Wellness.
Okay.
We'd love to have you join. So please join us.
Okay, great. So let me get to the questions, and I'm going to try to leave a round robin question at the end. So the first question I have for Lisa, how is GSK thinking about partnering with retailers to advance DNI?
Well, I love this question because I think it's an era where this becomes a new way to connect with consumers and shoppers. And I think partnering broadly, we've been talking to a lot of them. It's really how you show up with brands with humanity and what those retailer objectives are and who they believe they need to connect better with along the DNI spectrums of initiatives that they have. But we are in really great conversations, I think for the first time, about how to do that in all new ways, where it really is opening a whole new set of opportunity for commercialization in stores and across their online efforts. I'll give you one example, but a very large retailer was asking for how your brand show up in retail should really reflect DNI, and they really count on companies to bring those values to light. And so we sell the Tom's brand. It's a very easy example, but the messaging around that was everyone is welcome at our table, right? And Tom's treats digestive issues and things like that. And that got really prominent display within this retailer because it was sending a message that they wanted to make sure was clear to their shoppers as well. And so those are new ways of partnering and things that matter more than ever, and how we meet up with our retail partners and continue this journey together.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. I think the next question is for Jossie. Jossie, I'm going to try to interpret what this question is. Are retail associates provided training to ensure the promises made on Rite Aid's front doors are upheld with shoppers? So I guess it's around associate training for diversity and inclusion.
So we are on that journey. So we just appointed a vice president of DE&I, and that is what her goals and objectives are for this year, to really build that training, to get out into our front lines and ensure that everyone is comfortable and doing what they need to do to include everyone. So we're still on that journey. It's in the plans, but we haven't, obviously I wouldn't say we've done that and we're 100%, because we haven't. We've just started the messaging and the journey together as an organization.
Great. Heather, the next question I'm going to direct to you. Understanding there's been a lot of effort and attention relative to Walgreens' focus on supplier diversity as part of ongoing efforts to build closer alignment to your category review process. Can you maybe share a little bit about how you're making supplier diversity more part of your process?
Yeah, so we've been using, obviously the ECRM tools have been really important to us as we've looked at our DE&I goals, especially as it relates to suppliers. And RangeMe has been a key tool for our category managers to find and source suppliers that are of diverse backgrounds. And that is helping us we're actually including that as part of our line reviews going forward. Now, Roz, you hit it earlier, right? Line reviews are a long process. It's an annual process that takes time. And so it does take time to start to see the change happen as we incorporate that into a line review process. What I would add is, I go back to one of the best ways to start to get your product on the floor at a Walgreens is to start with the local aspect, because we have more flexibility to bring in those products at a different time. And it gets you into the communities where those communities are familiar with your products. So we can start to learn about the customer, because then we can use our data to understand which stores would be appropriate to expand to make sure we can continue to grow the brands. So, I'll call out to right? There's a summit coming up. It's our first one, but we are truly making these changes and making sure that we're opening the door so we can get access to these diverse suppliers, and making sure that we're able to include them within both line reviews, but within that localization plan too.
Thank you, Heather. Really a tremendous effort on behalf of the Walgreens merchant team to commit to that focus around diversity and inclusion. So one last question. We may run out of time. I'm hoping we could do a round robin. The last question for Andrea Fallon from Changework Review. I think it's a really good question. Outside of the retail industry, are there any public figures or personalities who inspire or influence your DEI efforts?
So I'll jump in. So thank you, Andrea, for the question. Very good. So I'll kind of break the norm to what your question is. So I tend not to personally gravitate to like large public figures as much as I do people that are able to impact me at a personal level. So I tend to be inspired by people I'm surrounded by, and leaders or coaches. So and that's really where I was going to go with it. So I have been an athlete. I guess I don't know if I'm still an athlete, but I like to think I'm still an athlete. But I was an athlete in my younger years, and I played volleyball through college. And I have had a number of coaches, and in particular, my college coach was of the LGBTQ community, and I learned a lot. First, female leader, diverse background, and I learned a lot from her about not necessarily, but just how to be inclusive and how to think about being a leader that's inclusive, how to think about having conversations on the team, how to think about stepping out of your comfort zone, how to that one in particular was what she always focused on me with. And so I've kind of gravitated in that way. She was one that made a large impact in my life, and really kind of transformed me into the type of leader that I am today. And I always reflect on that, and I tend to go there. I'm a huge Peloton advocate. I love it. And so there's instructors there that I'm just truly inspired by, their backgrounds, their stories, how they continue to push on, how they've transformed their lives. And to me, those are the types of things that I take in and kind of think about, like, how do I bring that into the way I operate my DE&I efforts, and share those so that others can have those thoughts, or hear my thoughts about them.
Anybody else?
Listen, I'm with Heather. I'm not a big grandioso, love people who are in high power positions, and I am influenced by many people that mean more to me. So I'm just going to go, honestly, as I made comments earlier, the we group and all of the leaders who have, honestly, look, I'm going to start crying again. There must be something wrong with me. The we leaders, Michele and Roz are here today, and many others who literally changed the way I approach my life, and literally have helped me, and the full we, change how I approach DE and I, both personally and professionally. I'm, I believe, a better person for each of them. So I will continue to lean on this group and those beyond it to really influence how I approach things in the future.
Great.
So thank you, ladies.
Does anyone, I didn't want to leave. I know we have maybe like 3-4 minutes left. I did want to ask one last round robin question to the panel. This is unscripted, but at 12 o'clock, we begin eCRM meetings for the day, where lots of diverse suppliers will begin their one-on-one meetings with the retailers. And true to Jocelyn, what you don't know, figure out what you need to know. So and all of you bring different perspective. There's retailers, there's CPG, there's consulting. You all offer lots of value. So here we go. What is the one question that a diverse supplier should ask a retailer at their meeting? The one insightful question that they need to think about when talking to a retailer. So first thing that comes to mind, and we'll conclude with that. Well, the one takeaway.
All right, my takeaway, and I'm not, I'm the dumb pharmacy folk here, but I would say, know your audience. It drives me crazy when people come and don't even know we don't have stores in Texas. Like, know your audience and bring to the table what you know about them, and don't make assumptions if you don't know. So similar to, you don't know what you don't know, but please know what you should know.
Yeah, wait, I'll go next. I think it's, what unmet need are you giving to their shopper that they are not serving today? And I think if you can answer that question, that will help determine the need for your product. And I would always also just leave with, Martin Luther King has some of the best quotes ever. And just in this conference in general, the time is always right to do the right thing. So just keep broadening the conversation and accepting the differences. We need it right now.
Heather?
So I'm going to add, know your customer and know how that customer overlaps the retailer that you're talking to. And never, ever, ever make the mistake of calling the retailer a different retailer name. Happens all the time. I know I'm bringing it up, but it's so important, because it just tells you it's a canned discussion versus a real, deep dive into how your product is relevant to the retailer you're talking to.
Great. Good point, Heather. Roz, the one thing.
Be honest about the volume you feel you can generate, and talk volume when you go to the meeting. What is the expectation? Should I start off on .com, or shall I be in brick and mortar? This is what we feel our projections are. How does that align with your expectations? And are your expectations margin? Are they sales, units, or a combination of all of the above? We want to be in your chain.
Right. And you don't necessarily have to be in 9,000 stores, 5,000 stores, or 1,500 stores. You can start in 200 stores.
You can grow organically.
Yes. Right. And I know, Michele, you have lots of experience talking to brands and retailers. You're not off the hook as a moderator.
Sure. I would say you're the expert, right? Bring fresh insights. Retailers are always looking for fresh insights on how your products can help that serve their objectives. So as long as you know their objectives and you're bringing some fresh insights, they'd love to be able to partner with you in that innovation.
Well, there you have it. It's the top of the hour. It is high noon. So again, you have heard from a panel of industry leaders, women leaders, people who are in the know. And for that, we sincerely thank you, Michele, for coordinating the panel, for the panelists. It really, truly is great to see you all. I know it's been too long. We thank you very much for being here with us today. And again, my last pitch, and I mean it, if you're not in with we, please join the group. I saw the formation of that group many years ago, and from that day, I knew that it was a terrific organization. Please connect with we. Everyone, good luck with your meetings. Good luck in the marketplace. Most importantly, stay safe, and lots of retailers have vaccinations. Have a great day.